Kulana Black Gemara. We're starting a new page today, beginning Behema Maksha, which is discussing the concept of Ben Pekua. One animal inside another animal. When you shech the mother, the baby calf inside is automatically permitted to be eaten. You can eat it, and there's because we say that the shchita of the mother is actually the machlekes achronim. Do we say that the shchita of the mother is effective for the shchita of the child, or do we say that since it was inside the mother, it doesn't need any shchita at all? And that difference is halacha. Anyway, we're going to discuss what happens if a limb of the animal was outside of the animal and then came back in. Is it still considered as part of the initial behemoth? We learn it out from the pasuk because in the pasuk it says that this is what you can eat from an animal, and goes through the signs and says behemoth, in the animal you can eat it. So, I mean, there are two reasons, but one of the reasons is either we say the second behemoth is as if it's you add it on to the first behemoth. A behemoth inside a behemoth you can eat with one shchita, or behemoth techela is everything that's inside the behemoth you may eat. These are the two limudim. How do we know that? And this is called a ben pekua. A ben pekua means either split open, or pekua means taken out, extracted. So says the Mishnah. Behemoth maksha later, behemoth is about to give birth. V'hoitzi ha'uber es yodai. And the baby calf, let's say, stretched out its hand before the shchita, and then the hechazina brought it back in. And the question is, how do we treat this hand? Do we say as if it left the behemoth, it's reborn, as if for the shchita the mother is not going to work or not? So we say mutter ba'achila, you're permitted to eat it, but it's not clear from the Mishnah what are you permitted to eat. Merely the animal that remained inside, but the hand that was outside even for one instant is already no longer part of the behemoth, or is once the hand is returned and the time of the shchita it was inside, the shchita is effective for the hand as well. And we'll see the Gemara machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda Rav and Ula Amar Rabbi Yechanan. And the halacha Rabbi Yehuda Rav that says only the uber is kosher, but the hand is not kosher because it was yotzei. Says the Mishnah further, the animal stuck out its head. Alpha Pisha brought it back in, sticking out its head already as if it was born already, just because it was sitting inside the mother at the time. It's as if it's an independent animal, and the shchita of the mother is not effective. It requires its own shchita. And the chiddush in the Mishnah is why dafka at the time when the behemoth is giving birth? What happens if the animal stuck out its hand on, the day before? The chiddush is that even though the animal already started giving birth, and so we would have thought that if the hand came out, that's called gave birth, which is more part of the body. I mean, that's part of the birth process. So therefore, even though uber might be usher, and the answer is no, it doesn't matter as long as the uber is inside the animal while the shchita took place. It's good enough. If let's say he cut the uber inside the mother's womb, mutter ba'achila, and or left it inside the mother's womb, cut parts out and left it inside the mother's womb, as long as during the time of the shchita it was inside the mother's womb and it never left, it's considered as if it's a ben pekua. If you took parts of the animal itself, like the spleen, the kidneys, parts that don't make the animal treif. We learned before that, nitl ha-tchoil, if the tchoil is taken away, is kosher. No, these are parts of the animal that make it render it treif. But you cut it off the animal, then also bachila. The animal's shchita is not going to be matter internal organs that are disconnected. If they don't make the animal treif, obviously, otherwise it's talking about treif. But the rest of the animal is kosher. This is the rule. That things which are part of the animal but have been severed from the animal, then they are awesome. Even though they're inside the animal, the shchita does not take any effect on it. But if it's not part of the animal, for example, part of the baby calf, part of the uber, and you cut parts of it off, as long as it's still sitting inside the animal, mutter, it is mutter. We said before that if you cut parts of if you were to cut the spleen off from the baby calf, and still sitting inside the animal, would be kosher. The Avid Atzmei also, when now Mishnah says that he stuck out his hand and brought it back in, he's mutter ba'achila. We're talking about the animal itself, the baby calf. We're not talking about the arm that's left the animal. My time, why? The arm makro, it says in the pasuk, ubasar basoda, meat that's out in the field, treifa, it becomes treif, and we define basoda means it's an open space. In other words, and we're going to dash it. Should have been behind mechitzas, for example. Should have been inside the animal. And now that it went out of the animal, it's treif. The same thing we have, something that should be in the base of midrash. You took the animal outside the base of midrash, it becomes treif. Anything that has mechitzas, and you took it out and you put it in the soda, you went beyond its confines, its boundaries, it becomes treif. Big machlekes in the achronim, and the trial of machlekes shonim. What do you mean by treif? Is it the pshat? Is the pshat here is the whole? What is shchita? Purpose of shchita? The whole purpose of shchita is an animal while it's alive is eva menachai. If you eat any part of the animal, you shechted, you eliminate the eva menachai. So is that what it means? So since the hand was sticking out of the animal, since the hand was sticking out of the animal, so therefore the shchita had no bearing on that hand. So if you eat that hand, it's treif because eva menachai. Or the pshat, no. Even as long as the hand was still, the arm, the foreleg, or the hind leg was still attached to the uber, the shchita definitely eliminated the even chai. But we learn from this pasuk a new issa that if it should have been inside the animal, was outside the mechitza tray. And the nafkamina is, can a guy eat it? Because a guy is forbidden to eat Eva Melchai, but they don't have to eat something that was slaughtered. So if you look at it as Eva Melchai, it's also for a guy. If you look at it as slaughtered, then it's not also for a guy. Thinking about it further,
you have to know which leg or which arm it was.
You have to know, otherwise, yeah.
You can.
Yeah, exactly. The farmer will definitely know, recognize it straight away. Once the flesh goes outside of its boundaries, Nessa comes also. Okay, so now let's ask a question. In the Mishnah, it says here, so we started in Rupei learning about Bemkua. We're learning about that if the behemoth stuck its foreleg outside the behemoth and then brought it back in, so the animal is kosher. So far, Rabbi Yonah says when we say it's kosher, he's talking about the baby calf itself, but the arm, the leg, the foreleg, the hind leg, they went outside, it's fafal. Even if you brought it back in, you're not allowed to eat it because basar the treifa. And then we spoke to Kiris. Says the Gemara, okay, it says in the Mishnah, Behema Makshalaid Ubers Yoda, and Uber stretched out his hand, brought it back in, Mutter Bachila. It says clearly Mutter Bachila. And we're talking about Yoda, the foreleg, and it says it brought it back in, and then you shechted Mutter Bachila. My lava Eva, we're talking about the foreleg. But no, Uber, we're talking about the Uber itself. Uber might eat a hexida. If we're talking about the Uber, and what happens, the animal did not bring back its foreleg. Or what happened then? You still need the Uber. So what's the Mishnah telling you here? That if he brought it back, what's the gay here he brought it back? Is that nami? You must say, right, who did? Same thing would have been, you're right. It didn't have to say he brought it back. Because as far as the foreleg is concerned, you can never eat once it went outside. Either because the kids didn't work, or because it went out of the animal's treif, went out of the mechitzis. But what do you call it? But the animal itself, you can eat regardless. The foreleg itself, you can never eat. I don't care hechzir. So why does the Mishnah say hechzir? I've got hechzir. In the sefer, it wants to tell you what happens. The contrast instead of the foreleg, stuck out his head. The head, even though you brought the head back in, it's kiyol. Hareze kiyol, he was born, and therefore the entire behema is aser, because once it's born, it's no longer part of the mother. It's no longer bemkua. We are going to see later machlekes between the Meir Chamim in a few blot, and his name is if the animal is a full 9 months, and is ready to go out, do we still say bemkua, that the shchita of the mother, or do we say that Meir says that's a registered independent animal? This holding the bemkua is it's a ben ches, only 8 months, or whatever, or 9 months not yet ready. But if it's 9 months and fully ready, it's already independent, even though it's inside the mother. Chacham say no. Cold man and cold anything inside the mother is mefeish you can eat. So anyway, so the chiddush here is, but hoitzi is roish, not the foreleg, the head. It's kiyolo. Even though you put it back in, forget the head. The whole animal you can't eat. It's a nomination. If we mentioned that they also brought it back in, but taka makes no difference. The hand is always the foreleg is always asad, and the behem is always mutter. But let's understand. So what's the sefer? You're telling me the whole chiddush mission is the sefer. That stuck its head out, was born. That concept we already know from other places, as we'll see in a minute. You have a thing called a b'choir. You have a b'choir lenachla and a b'choir when it comes to by a pidyon ben. And by a b'choir pidyon ben has to be peterechem. It has to be peterechem. So therefore, if it's born after a nafel, it's no longer peterechem. You have the first. But when it comes to b'choir nachla, we learn now it has to be yakir. That means only if this is the first one that you recognize. But if it was a nafel, so the father had no feelings for this because it was a nafel from the beginning, or a ben ches, 8 months old. So then the second child is actually the b'choir nachla. So there we have a din as follows. The Sefer, my kamashlo, and what are you trying to tell me this? You tell me the whole Chiddush and Mishnah is a Sefer. That what? Like even the Yotzer Rosh have later, the head pops out as if it's born. We learned that already as well. We learned where it says, who is considered a b'chayr when it comes to inheritance? The ain't a b'chayr, but as far as Pidyon Ben is concerned, he's not a b'chayr. Habo achan nefalem. If let's say you were born, there was a miscarriage, and then this guy was born, you're not peter echem, so you're not b'chayr for Pidyon Ben, but you're b'chayr nachla. So even though that the nafel's head already went out. Even though the navel stuck his head out when he was alive, but he was only 8 months old, or a 9-month-old baby, but only after he died inside the mother's womb, was still born, did it stick his head out. In both of these cases, we say, well, as far as Nachla is concerned, the second child is the first one, is really the b'chayr. Time, so a 9-month-old baby, it says, when do we say that the second child is b'chayr Nachla? If Roishay Meis. If the first child, the Naples child, it was dead already when it stuck his head out. Had the child been alive, even for 1 second, stuck his head out, it's as if he was born. So we see from here that the Rosh is considered born. What would be the din if the Rosh would have been alive? So we see here clearly a head of the the Gemara B'chayis will learn with Sugi that the head means the pedachas, the forehead. And Machlekes Rishonim means the entire pedachas or the red pedachas, because the word is yakir. Yakir, recognize, where do you recognize? And the face, the front of the head. Bottom line is, we know the concept that the ratio is considered as if you're born. What's the question? Ashmi'in and bottom. There in B'chayis, we're learning the concept when it comes to a human. It's the head that is considered yulud. And here in our Mishnah, by behema, to tell you the same thing. The kamashlan on the behema. Once you know the by one, why can't you learn from another? Because you can't. The adam the aim pros the behema. You cannot learn the adam from a behema because by behema there's no canal in between. You can see the baby calf while before it's born, just because there's nothing in between the uterus and the ground. So therefore, it's as if it's almost born already. It's like the head out. It's mama's born. Mashengi by an adam, just have to go through the process. So maybe it's not considered born until more than just a roisha. Maybe need ruboy. That's what we would have thought. No, so tell us only by Adam we would learn behavior from Adam. But Adam for the choshev parts of Padim today. By a person, the face is very important. That's the whole mile of a person, an intellect, his face. By behavior, one behavior is good as another. Is therefore by behavior, the face. Why should the face be any more important than any other part of the animal? Maybe he drive. That's a chiddush as well. So the mother knew. Okay, but even by behavior, we already know the concept that a roish is considered as if you were born already. So you tell me the whole Chiddush Ram Mishnah is the sefer that the head is already born. We know that elsewhere. Where we learned Shilya. So you have the embryonic sac. Now in the embryonic sac, we say there's a good chance that there's a baby inside there. So Shilya, she yotza miktsasa. So by a Shilya, part of it already exited the mother's womb. Is asur b'achila. You're not allowed to eat any part of that shilya, even the part that remained inside during the shchita. Why? Because the shilya definitely means there's a vlad inside, and is a symbol of a vlad, the shilya. And we're worried that part of the shilya that was outside, the head of the vlad was there. So therefore, the shchita of the mother was not yaitze this vlad. It was only a small part of the shilya, but we say the head might have been there. So what we say that even by behemoth, the head is the vital part. That's the part that has to be, and that's the part we say havi kiyolod. Yeah. The chila kesim of la bisha of la behemoth because by yisha it's the head, so by behemoth as well. So it goes back to it goes back to the Mishnah. What's Pshat Mishnah? It seems like this. If you can tell me, not like Rabbi Yehuda Marab, but the Chiddush in the Mishnah is that the foreleg that even though it went outside, since it came back in, the foreleg is mutter. So that's the Chiddush in the Mishnah. So the Sefer is no Chiddush. What the head is considered born. We know that from Shilya. Now, boss, the Chiddush in our Mishnah is that if it stuck out its foreleg and it brought it back in, mutter b'achila. And what's the mutter b'achila mean? That you're allowed to eat the foreleg. And the Chiddush is it went out, you brought it back in, you can eat it now. That's a big Chiddush. So yeah, I'm just like have the relation dafke to tell you I want that the head goes on the even and mutter to the safe on the nation. So then the safe, even though there's no chiddush about the head, but it's agav grota. Once you bring the din regarding the foreleg, you brought it back in. You may eat the foreleg, so it tells you also about the head. Okay, it's fafal. Eli, if you can tell me, loy did Can you tell me, no. The foreleg is also, once it's stuck out, and it's really the uber that's permitted. And the chayre, for the uber is permitted, mine afkamina, the baby calf. Mine afkamina, if you brought the foreleg bracket, you didn't bring it back in. Either way, the foreleg is always also. The uber is always mutter. So you tell me that the reason is for the sefer. The table, the head went out, it's a whole different story. But the sefer also is no chiddush. The sefer dafka is one of the mystic cloud. So why is the mission bringing it up at all? We're talking about the uber, but there's a chiddush in the Mishnah. There's a difference if the animal brought the foreleg back or not, and that is a Nachum Yitzchak din, which we'll see. He says, when you have the foreleg you cannot eat, but when you cut the foreleg, there's the part of the body that's exposed to the foreleg. So according to Rav Nachman Yitzchak, if the foreleg remained outside, then not only the foreleg that's sticking out can eat, but the part that's contiguous to it, that's connected to it, you have to then be careful. You have to take off part of it because you cannot eat it. But if they brought the foreleg back, then the foreleg that went out is awesome, but the rest of the uber completely, even the part that was exposed to it, is mutter. So there's a there is a chiddush in the reisha here. There is a difference if you brought the leg back or not. The part that you cut off. We're going to ask questions now. So you say the foreleg is awesome. Let me ask a question. It says, you stretch out, the uber stretched out its foreleg and brought it back in. Then you shut the mother, again, according to Beautiful Rab, what's mutter b'achila? The uber itself, not the foreleg. Then it says, shochat as ima, whatever you shechted the mother. No, but extended out the foreleg, left it outside during the shechita and brought it back in afterwards. Asa b'achila. Now, what's asa b'achila? If we're talking about the uber, why is asa b'achila? So obviously we're talking about the foreleg. The foreleg went back in time. Didn't go back in time. It's also kasha and Rabbi. But while we read the rest as well. What happens if the animal extended it in its foreleg? The chotcha, and you cut it off first. And the achikach shochet is imay, and then you shechted the mother. Tibachutz is tamei. That part which is sticking out is tamei. Why? Because it was eva menachai. When you cut it, you didn't shech the mother yet, so it was eva menachai, and therefore eva menachai. The din is that it's tamei, just like an avela. Rules more possible. So you shechted the mother, and then you cut. So if you cut the thing first, it was mamash even a says tummy like an avela. But what happened? You shechted the mother. The foreleg was sticking out, but it was outside the behemoth. But you shechted the mother. And afterwards you cut. You cut it. May hold the same thing. Well, the same thing. That's the boss is magnavich. I'm saying no. Since it was connected to the uber, the shchita did something. What did the shchita do? It took away the tomb of nevela, even though it was outside B'shas Ma'aser, but it was connected to the uber. So at least the shchita was effective. It took away the isur of tumah of nevela. It's only treifa. Magat treifa shchuta. All it is magat is considered you're touching a treifa. And later on, we'll talk about what do you mean magat treifa. What's the meaning of magat treifa? So, and this is the basis of what we said before, the chakira. Because the shechita did something to this foreleg, even though it was outside the behemoth, so maybe it removed the isa of eva mechayin as well. And the reason why you're not allowed to eat the foreleg is because of a new isa called basa basada treifa. That's one view. So Prima God has a whole chiddush in the beginning there. And the other way of learning is no, that the shechita, only thing that the shechita was effective was to take away the tumas nevela, tumah. But nothing else. Nothing to do with kashas.
Is your man saying it's Eva Menachai?
He's saying it in not even a chai, but it's still tumas nevela. Yeah. And yeah, let's get back to our question now. Let's go back to the beginning of the Bryce. It says that Hoyte Uber Yoda Verzir brought it back. Obviously, we're not talking about the Uber, because it makes no difference. We're talking about the foreleg. My lava Eva. Kasha and Rav. Lo ya Uber. No, if you want to Uber in the Sefer, it says Shochat as ima v'achach as let's say shechted the mother only after it brought it back in. Asa b'achila. What's asa? The Uber am I asa? If you're talking about the Uber itself, why should it be asa? And for the Gemara, asa means this is what Rav says. What we mean asa? The part that's exposed So this, if he brought it back in, then all you have to do is cut off the exact part that was sticking out, and the rest is all kosher. If he did not bring it back into the shechita, then not only the foreleg is also, but also the part of the makom chatach is also. So you have to cut that part, little part off.
You have to mark it.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, exactly. When Abima came from Bechozoi, also he came and he brought a brisa with him. In the brisa is based on the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, every behemoth that's mafresh is parsa, and shashat says so on and so forth. Then it's a state process, two process. What are two process? So it starts with mafresh parsa and then two process, as if there could be one parsa, two process. So he says like this. He brought a brisa with him. It says. And this is the pasuk that we use for bempkua. Behema called the behema tochelu or behema bebehema, whichever drush it is. Two drushes. Yeah. So he brought a brayse. Yeah. So now we want to know why the pasuk says parsa. Starts off behema. It says mafresh says parsa, and then says stay process. What are each one? Obviously, must be coming to teach you something. What's it coming to teach you? What do you mean? So we still get. Sometimes you could only eat a parsa, sometimes you need both process. When l'chayda, if you both legs went out, and then you, what do you call it, and brought it back in, you can eat both process. If you only brought one leg back in, you can eat only parsa. Klor, that we're talking about the leg itself. As long as the animal brought it back in before the shchita, it's mutter. Not like you remember that. But the Gemara says parsa herzir achel. That was if you brought back one, you can eat. Parsa is herzir achel. My lab, what's this going on today? What are you allowed to eat? For this we learn about behemoth, you're allowed to eat the behemoth itself. But you're making a difference in a parsa and process. The uber is only one uber. The only difference would be if you brought back one leg, you brought back two legs. That is talking about the legs, the four legs. My lab, herzir parsa. Let's say both legs went out went outside, but one leg went back in achel. Parsa, then you can only eat that one leg. Loy herzir parsa achel uber. If you didn't bring it back, you eat uber. So whatever. So that's the chiddush. And if it brought two, you eat both. And that's what parsa and process is. Depends how many you brought back in. Call that the four leg you can eat. So if Uber my area herze, so my answer is no, we're talking about Uber, yeah. Uber my area herze, then again, like we asked before. If we're talking about the Uber, my nafkamin, if you brought the four leg back in, you're telling me the four leg, once it went out, it's usher. It's usher. The Uber you can always eat. So my nafkamin, you brought back in or not. Again, Uber my area herze, nami. Here's Amnach said his din. There's a difference if he brought it back in or not, and that is if he didn't bring it back in, then it's also not only the foreleg but also the part that's exposed to it. If you brought it back in, the part that's exposed to it is mutter. But what do you learn from the two psukim? One is parsa, one is precise. Where if you learn that the legs themselves are mutter, so the daf kamina. You brought back one leg, you brought back two legs. Oh, but what today you bring the two psukim over here. And if all we're talking about is the makam chatach, the man have committed one leg or two leg. We're saying it. My lad chadle makam chatach. So it must be the reason why I have two psukim is one to tell you, say you're din of makam chatach, and one to tell you that even the Eber is mutter. So I say, no. You're right. I have two psukim there, but to teach you two dinim. One is the makam chatach, the animal brought back in the foreleg. Then the makam chatach is all right. If it didn't, then the makam chatach is also. And the second one is the kola b'meye para. And the second one is what happens is machlekes will have the gemara between Abshimon and the chachamim and Mechaydos. If a dover had tomei hayotzim and dover had toir, a cow gave birth to a camel. A freak of nature, and can you eat that camel or not? And the Chacham say yeah, call is Torah, and Abshimon says you can't. But Abshimon is made if you found it inside the animal, it is Torah. It is Torah. And the reason why he said that you're not allowed to is because this is the machlek, this is the chakira and the ritva we spoke about Baricha 2 days ago. That are simonim what makes it Torah, or simonim is a rai that is Torah. And Rav Shimon says simonim makes it Torah. So what do I care about its yichus? The fact is that this is a gomel. Can't eat it. Chacham say that simonim are merely a raya that it's Torah. I mean, we say it's a Rogatsh of Reis Engel talks about it. It was actually we discussed with the ritva in Nida, and if you learn that simonim is just a raya, we know where it came from. So if it has a simonim. The chiddush here is that we have a special pasuk, even Rav Shimon, who says that you need the simonim to make a kosher, but if you shechted it while it was inside the mother simonim is good enough for kid. That's what he's saying here. So that's what the chiddush is. Rav Shimon called it ben para osir. Only when it went out in the world. That's one view. Come along, Ulam Rabbi Yechanan. He argues. He says the Eber Asli Mutter. Not only the Uber's Mutter, but the Eber brought it back in before the Shchitter, it is Mutter. They argue, they say it's also. Malay. So Ula said, "Man Yov lama afra the Rabbi Shmuel. The Rabbi Shmuel, the most chashuv of people. Give us just the dust around them. And we'll fill up our eyes with it. We love what they say. But in this case, we have to follow Rabbi Yechanan. Everything was included. Anything went outside of the animals also, and out of the mechitzas. When the Torah says by a chatas, if you took it outside the base of Hamikdash, the chazra, and we have a special limud by Karma Chatas, we see by Moshe Rabbeinu said to Aaron, "Hey, why did you burn the Chatas?" And was it taken out and brought it back in? Is that right? From there we learn special pasuk by a carbon. If you take it outside the base of the mechitzas, too late, you can't bring it back in. Why need a special pasuk? If the din is every animal, the moment it stuck its leg out, the leg becomes usher. Why do you need a pasuk by kachim that went out of its mechitzas as kosher? Must be that's only by kachim. Only by those things we say if it went out of the mechitzah, you can't bring it back in. But by an animal, went out, you could bring it back in. And when you bring it back in, and then you shecht, also mutter. The chazar asur, the chatos are part of only by chatas. Abel, kol mili, everything else, keeping the hadr shadi. Once you bring it back, it goes back to mikar. Okay, makes lots of question out of it. Why does it say we find by Maisa Sheni Bekurim? We find by Maisa Sheni and by Bekurim Moshe tells soon where. Maisa Sheni has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. What happens? He took it out of Yerushalayim. Of course, you can bring it back in. Even though the Chatili came from outside Yerushalayim, but you would have thought that once you bring in Yerushalayim, that's it. There's a Chalais, a Kedusha, or another step of Kedusha, you can't take it out. Yet the din is you took it out, or Bekurim, you took it out, you can bring it back in. So Yachal, I would have thought the same thing by an animal that it's extended its foreleg. You put it back in. I was kosher Talmud. Today for first of all, my Talmud. How exactly do you learn from the pasuk? Kid treifa. We compare it to a treifa. Ma treifa kivish for the animal. Once an animal becomes treif, shubin leheter. There's two fafal. Once it's labeled, once it's treif, it's treif. Av basa kim shiyotza chutzah mechitzasa shubin leheter. Klar, in this brisa here, that once the animal stuck out his foreleg, it doesn't help putting it back in. Must say right tiyufta the ula tiyufta. You just said in the brisa fisherman we find Ma'aser Shein Bekurim. Hechem, where do you find Taka? Who said that Ma'aser Shein Bekurim? You took it out of Shalim, you could bring it back in. You cannot eat it in your neighborhood. Maase the goncha. So we dash and b'sharecha de loisechel. You cannot eat it in your sharim. Abel yotzu chut, but in Shalim you could. And I don't care if it was there, went out. Abel yotzu chutz mechitzasan. V'chazim mutanis muterim. But my Rabbi Masna Hochi in Yisrael, they learn this way. Rav says in my Rabbi they have the same machlekes, but they use a different word. That the Rav says yesh leida levarim. Rav says if an Eva was extended, that's as if that Eva was born. Melefafal, you can't, the shchita won't work. And Rabbi Yechanan says ein leida levarim. Only by a reish, but the Eva is not considered born. Bring it back in. It's the same machlekes for the Gemara and my Benaya. What's the difference? Which version? We learn the bubble dicker version or the soldier version. The outcome is the same. The nafkamin is lemesa miyut aver shebefnim. What happens to the rest of the aver inside? What happens to the rest of the aver inside? If most of the aver went out and a little bit stayed inside, according to the second lashon that calls it later, it was born. So even the meat that's inside, it's born. Could you go after the rape? But according to the first lashon, that he went out of the mechitzas, basar masada treifa, only the part that went outside of the animal is treif, but the rest of the aver is mutter. So Gemara has an interesting chakir here. Says the Gemara, the one said there's no later by avodim. Right? Rabbi Yechanan says that what the aver going out, puts back in, also good and fine. What happens? Hoitzi ha'uber es yoda, if the uber, let's say, struck out his hand, and brought it back in. So you tell me that what? It wasn't born. The chaz of a hoitzi es yoda, he stuck his hand out again, and most of the aver then went outside. Is out. Most of the sorry? Most of the Uber, most of the Uber went outside. But remember, according to one holds no later, a little bit went out incrementally, a little bit went out of time. Nothing happened. Do we do the aggregate now and say, oh, but the rate of the Uber went out even according to him? So if the Uber itself went out, it's born. Or do we say when it came back in as if nothing ever happened? Or something happened, but halach is not a problem. So then we do add up all the pieces. And now, the fact that the rate Uber went out, keep the hadar. Once it back, keep the hadar. Do we say once it came back, it came back? So therefore, what? So no problem. What about Haishi Uber es yodai the chatcha? You stuck out his hand, and you cut off part of the hand. The chazav haitzis yodai chatcha. Whatever the balance took out, and again you cut it, and the ad sheshlima lerubai until you cut piece by piece. Mao, mi amrin hanav lerubai. Here definitely the rave came out and nothing went back in. Okay, you're telling me that it's as if it wasn't, only a little piece, nothing happened, wasn't born, but maybe only when you went back in. Here, you kept on slicing it off. You need the raven one go. Tashmat, you must conclude, it says in our Mishnah, this is the rule. Remember we said that if you cut part of the uber off, as long as it's still sitting in the behemoth, the shchita, the mother is effective. But if you cut off the spleen, the tchoil, and the kloyas and the kidneys of the animal itself, even though the animal is still kosher, nitl hatchoil is still kosher, but since it's part of the animal itself, and part of the animal is not there, then even though sitting inside the behemoth, the shchita of the mother of the behemoth does not matter the parts of the animal itself. And the Mishnah says, Zakla, if it's a part of its own goof, but not attached to the goof, also tosser. But it's not part of its own goof, like the uber. And you cut parts of the uber off, it's sitting in the behemoth, it's kosher. Mutter. She'ein goof. When it says this cloud, what's it coming to add? My lab, isn't it coming to add to tell you that if a little bit of the uber remained behind, and most of it went out, it was cut off. Nevertheless, it is kosher. That's what I'm saying. That's kosher. More like no. Lasuye to tell you kolud b'meye pora. What we just said before. The liba de Rab is coming to tell you that if, let's say, it doesn't have the kosher signs, kolud, it doesn't have split hooves, but it's inside the mother. Even Rab Shimon, who says generally it doesn't work, a gomel, the son of a ben, a potter, doesn't work. But if it's inside the animal, it's kosher. But inside the mother's womb, shadi, it is permitted. We'll stop painting tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem.